This play has such a beating heart to it. It's like that when you finish a book and you close it and there's tears in your eyes and you just want to go back and experience it again. That's how I felt.
I was delighted it was being revived, and I didn't know it hadn't been revived since its original Broadway production, so that was a huge attraction. It's constructed superbly, the dialogue is magnificent, the depth of the characters is profound, and if done satisfactorily, it has an extraordinary impact.
I don't think that either one of them, throughout the course of their lives, had often met their match intellectually. She had written to somebody else and said, he just about knocked my props out from underneath me, and I've seldom enjoyed anything more.
And there's a wonderful sort of sense of a tight-knit group, which is really enhances the process for all of us. As is most fortunately the case with Robin, have a co-lead with whom one feels tremendous confidence.
I think Joy and C.S. Lewis's relationship will always be relevant. It will always resound to any audience, no matter what is happening. It's a love story, and it's a really good one. Another huge question this play asks, this huge universal question, I know I asked myself this last week when I turned on the news. How can a good God, a God of love, allow such awful things to happen? That's heavy stuff. So I hope that people are asking themselves some heavy questions on the way home, and also reminiscing about some beautiful things that they've gone through in life as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Marshall Pennell. Welcome to the Fellowship for Performing Arts virtual presentation on creating theater and film from a Christian worldview in a post-Christian world. I think we've got some good things to talk about today. Max McLean, the founder, artistic director, the president of Fellowship for Performing Arts, is with us. We're going to have a conversation in a few minutes about his perspectives on some of these things related to doing art from a Christian worldview in a post-Christian world, something that Max has been doing for many years. I think you'll enjoy his comments. You're here today because you were part of watching one of the Fellowship for Performing Arts virtual productions that we've been doing over the last several months, probably the Shadowlands production. It was 2 weeks ago today. We saw that little clip just now in the introduction, and it gave you a little bit of a hint of what the stage production was like. You saw the actors on screen virtually 2 weeks ago, and I sat here in my living room and watched it 2 weeks ago and loved it. I hope you liked it too. Some of you may have also seen the virtual production of The Great Divorce a couple of months ago, or the virtual production of Martin Luther on Trial. We have other ones coming up also in the future, so you want to kind of keep your eye out for those when they come. But what we wanted to do today is take the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about Fellowship for Performing Arts, what they're hoping to accomplish in the work that they do, and how they go about that. So we're going to have that conversation today. A little bit of housekeeping, first of all, just so that this virtual experience can be as good as possible for you. The first thing is, if it so happens that as you're watching, the voice gets kind of out of sync with the picture, don't panic, just refresh your browser. It should correct that. That happens sometimes through YouTube. So if that happens today, then just refresh that browser, you'll be good. We're going to have a question and answer time at the end of our piece today, and you'll be able to actually ask questions to Max McLean about some of the things that he talks about today. So in order to do that, you're going to use the chat feature. If you're logged into YouTube, then you'll see the chat feature over on the right. If you're not logged into YouTube, you don't have the chat feature, so log in and you'll be able to do that. But what we'd like to ask you to do is type out some questions that you would like to have Max consider and answer today, and then we'll pick those questions and we'll take a few of them at the end of our piece, and Max will actually answer you. To make that a good experience, also, we'd like to ask that you put your name, your city, and state so we know who we're talking to when we answer the question. I think that takes care of the housekeeping things. I want to start out by showing you something that we're very excited about that we were doing up until a year ago this last week, when we just had to stop temporarily with live theater production. And that was the theater productions that we were doing in universities on major college campuses all over the USA, taking the piece C.S. Lewis on Stage, The Most Reluctant Convert, and presenting it to university students. I want to show you a little video that was shot when we did this at University of California, Berkeley, taking this wonderful piece to their Zellerbach Hall, the great big auditorium at Berkeley. Please watch this little video with me, and then we'll introduce Max McLean.
First, I found this through a Facebook event. I was really surprised that this play was coming here on UC Berkeley campus, like a school university campus, not another playhouse or anything. Very accessible to all the students on the campus. Also thankful for the discount for the students. It was like, oh, it's just $5. I could totally just check this out. Overall performance, the actor was amazing. The play was wonderful, and it was very informational, like about C.S. Lewis's life and his thought process and his journey from atheism to Christianity.
I really like the show. It's something very different than what Berkeley usually has. I'm a theater major here, and the topics are always very secular for the most part. So seeing this, I was kind of surprised, but like super excited. I really liked it. It really relates to me and where I'm at. I just had a conversation the other day with an atheist. So being here today and like watching someone do theater about that topic here at Berkeley, where I'm like surrounded by people who are like, you're a Christian, but you're doing theater. It was really inspirational.
I think tonight went wonderfully. It was a dream come true to have an artistic expression of a narrative that discusses deep questions of life rather than having some sort of argument to whichever conclusion is so effective to get people to think and have conversations for themselves.
Tonight was absolutely amazing. I know that all of us were like, okay, are we gonna even fill this auditorium halfway? And then seeing like the ticket sales come in and the numbers, I guess like it just speaks to the need and the desire among students to, you know, see wholesome entertainment, and more importantly, entertainment that is thought-provoking, especially for the big questions of life that, you know, we wrestle with but don't always have a venue to discuss so wholesomely. At the end of the day, it's about the hearts and minds of students and the hearts and minds of like audience members that came in tonight. It's about, I guess, like even serving this campus in a way that we may not see in the physical realm. Yeah.
We're here with Max McLean, founder, president, artistic director of Fellowship for Performing Arts. Max, that sure brings back good memories to see you on stage and to see that happening. We're also going to talk today a little bit about the film that you've just made, and we're going to, at the end of today's program, show a clip of that film so people can see that. But first, I want to go back to what happened at Berkeley. I was in the room that night, such electricity. Tell us a little bit about what that was like at Berkeley when you were on stage presenting C.S. Lewis, Most Reluctant Convert, to all of these Berkeley University students.
Well, it was an amazing event, Marshall. Probably one of the highlights of our ministry, to be able to tell a story of a journey from atheism to Christianity at the UC Berkeley campus would have been something that I thought we couldn't do. We had a full house, about 1,600 people, students and others, listening to a Christian conversion story in what is considered a post-Christian environment. It's not that's not necessarily nefarious. It's just Christianity is just not that important. So the case for Christianity just doesn't get made. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to do a university initiative. And it's been something I've been pleased to say we've been invited to many campuses to tell to do one of our theatrical productions: Princeton, Brown, Columbia, Duke, Penn, UNC Chapel Hill, University of Virginia, just to name a few. And these are so well attended. We work with the local college ministries to make this a very broad event. The last performance I did before the pandemic was a year ago last Thursday at Northwestern University. We had a full house of students at Northwestern. And the first show that was canceled was the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, which we hope to be back as soon as this is over. I want to point out the young Asian woman who spoke at the end of that video. She is one of the 20 senators that govern the 40,000 students at UC Berkeley campus. There are 20 student senators. She's one of 20. And it was her authority as a senator that enabled us to secure this big PAC on the UC campus and to be able to connect our people with the UC officials who control those events. So it's encouraging to me to note, and just leave you with this thought, that she was elected on a Christian platform and had the second highest vote total of any of the senators. So maybe UC Berkeley is not as post-Christian one would think.
That's interesting. You know, it could be that the way that we hear the world described today is not entirely accurate when it comes down to the details of people. That's a great lead-in, actually, to telling us a little bit more about the broader work of Fellowship. It's not just something that happens on university campuses. Tell us a little bit more about the work of Fellowship for Performing Arts overall.
Right, right. Well, most of the folks that are here have seen some of our virtual work. You know, you mentioned the Shadowlands virtual presentation from 2 weeks ago that was so wonderfully received by, I think, about 25,000 people viewed it. And it's really important that people see our work before hearing a presentation about it, because our work is more caught than taught. We're a Fellowship for Performing Arts, a not-for-profit New York City theatrical production company that tells stories, good stories from a Christian worldview meant to engage a diverse audience. Before the pandemic and the national shutdown, we had multiple shows on national tour. You mentioned them, Screwtape, Great Divorce. We had a show sitting down in New York, Paradise Lost, and we had a regular slate of college performances with Most Reluctant Convert. All these shows, plus the others that we do, Shadowlands and others, have one thing in common. They each are meant to engage the moral imagination to a point where it causes people to evaluate their assumptions. Theater is meant to wake people up to the reality of God, his son, Jesus Christ. In that sense, FPA is a ministry. I think those who see our work can see that. We do our work by, selecting the right material, executing it to the highest levels that our budgets will allow so that we can play the great theatrical venues around the country. And finally, we ask people like you who are watching to help us to do it. In fact, that's why we're called Fellowship for Performing Arts. It's a fellowship of people that believe art and theater, now film, from a Christian worldview can capture the imagination and influence culture.
Max, a year ago, last week, you said you did your final performance at Northwestern University in Chicago, and Broadway has been dark now for a year. All theater's been off stages for a year, and yet this is what Fellowship for Performing Arts has always done. Overall, how has the pandemic affected the work of FPA?
Well, it's been hard. You know, we live and work in New York, and the New York creative economy, which is arts, theater, publishing, museums, and you combine that with hospitality and tourism, is the single largest employer in the city, and that's just died. That's what makes New York, New York. And on March 15th, that all stopped. At FPA, at Fellowship, we were moving 2,000 tickets a week, and all of a sudden we were selling 0 tickets a week. And at first we thought this was going to be a short shutdown. I remember the governor saying 15 days to flatten the curve. I'm sure you remember that.
Right.
Then, you know, they said we'd be back, theater would be back in April. Then it was May, then it was June, July, August, and now everything is canceled at least through August of 2021. And that means for us, we've lost at least 17 months of doing the work that we were called to do and not be able to connect with our supporters.
A lot of things, Mac, have just stopped in the last year. I mean, people just were not able to do some of the things that they always did to make their living, to carry out their work. How did FPA respond when you had to stop going to theaters and performing in front of audiences full of people? How did FPA respond to all of this?
Well, first of all, we had to get over the shock that it was going to last a lot longer than anyone expected. You know, I mean, 2 weeks felt like long enough. What am I going to do for the next 2 weeks? Then we realized it was going to be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and 6 months, and now a year. And so the first thing we began to do is, once we got over it, we got investing in new projects. Many were already in early stages of development, but this now we had the headspace to really move them forward at a rapid pace. For me personally, it's allowed me to to write a sequel to The Most Reluctant Convert that's tentatively titled Further Up, Further In. We pivoted, of course, to the virtual online theater events that our folks have experienced. I think you mentioned Martin Luther on Trial, The Great Divorce. You mentioned, obviously, Shadowlands, which was such a big hit. We have redeveloped a stage version of Mark's Gospel, which we haven't done in over 12 years. Very excited about that. In fact, our next virtual event will begin Palm Sunday, and it will run through Easter Sunday, and we're calling it Easter Passion, following Jesus through the final days of his life through the crucifixion and his resurrection. So we're very, very excited about that. You'll be hearing more about that in the next few days, probably the next week or so. We'll begin publicizing it. But of course, the biggest pivot of all was to make a full feature movie. In this case, it's a TV movie of The Most Reluctant Convert, with 15 actors, 190 extras, 270 costumes, and 20 different locations in and around Oxford. And we did that with Norman Stone, who is the person who originally developed Shadowlands.
So, Max, that's quite a jump from theater to film, a jump that would probably be intimidating to take. But you went ahead and did that in this difficult time. Tell us a little bit about how that happened. Tell us more about that film.
Well, we almost felt like we had no choice. I mean, when we looked at our calendar, it was just miles and miles of empty pages, empty spaces. And so we just had to find new ways to accomplish the work that we were called to do. Norman Stone is somebody I've respected from afar, probably since the 80s, when I first saw his version of Shadowlands, the BBC television version of it, based on the relationship and marriage of C.S. Lewis and Joy Davidman, and it later became a Broadway play and then a feature film starring Anthony Hopkins and Deborah Winger. Fellowship did the very first New York City revival of Shadowlands in 2017. I think it originally was 1990. And then, of course, we did the virtual presentation last month. About 10 years ago, Norman and I met at an arts conference in California and hit it off immediately. And since we've been in communication ever since. And Norman loves the Lord. He loves the arts. He loves C.S. Lewis. He grew up as a preacher's kid, and he had a similar vision to what I had, to produce excellent films from a Christian worldview. Had a long stint with the BBC, 40 years. Has made over 100 films and television programs. He's received 2 BAFTA awards, which is the British version of the Oscars. About 18 months ago, I approached Norman about making a film of Most Reluctant Convert. He loved the original script and wanted to stay close to the play as possible, and while expanding the story, as I mentioned before. And then we talked for several months. We decided we would, open it up with 3 actors playing Lewis, 1 as a boy, 1 as a young man, a 3rd as an elder Lewis. That would be me retelling his conversion story. We'd bring in actors to play Tolkien, Barfield, Dyson, his mom and dad, his great teacher Kirk, the great Knock, among others. Now, we originally saw this as a 2022, 2023 project, but when the reality of the long-term shutdown hit, Norman pointed out, this was back in June, July, that the British government would open up for filmmaking under tight restrictions if we wanted to move this process forward. He also pointed out, since no one had been had worked in film since March, that he had available to him a first-rate team, film crew, at competitive rates if we acted quickly. So I told Norman to confirm all this and make sure the locations we needed were available. And at the same time, I would approach our board to see if I could get the funds allocated. The board approved the budget, and we secured the underlying rights in the C.S. Lewis estate. I boarded an empty flight to London for 2 weeks of quarantine at the end of August and began pre-production in middle of September. And we completed our film filming in the middle of October, and I think it's been in post-production ever since, and I believe the final film was just completed last week.
Wow, I can't wait to see that final edition. I saw a little bit of a sneak preview, and it's absolutely fantastic. Again, we have a little bit of a clip that we're going to show to folks today at the end of this program. So everybody stay tuned, and you're going to love what you see with this little clip of A Most Reluctant Convert, the film. Max, you mentioned in your comments just now that the Shadowlands production that we saw 2 weeks ago today in its virtual sense was actually done by FPA in New York on stage in the theater a couple of years ago. That's pretty strong stuff. It's a program, or the script really teaches some great difficult truths. And how did that go over in the Big Apple, where theater is usually a little bit different than that? What was the response?
Yeah, well, our online audiences absolutely loved it. And that is indicative as well of how the New York audiences and the New York critics felt about it. The editor for Theater World came up to me after the performance in New York. I was backstage. I was in the lobby, and I did a Q&A, so he recognized me afterwards to tell me how moved he was. And he said this, I thought was very interesting. You don't see this type of work being produced in New York. He also said that the play reminded him of how much God was missing in his life. And I thought, amen. That's wow. One of the objectives. The New York Times loved Danny Gerald's performance, loved Robin Abramson's performance. I mean, they were brilliant performances.
So good.
C.S. Lewis. The New Yorker praised the direction of Krista Scott Reed and said how the cast caught every nuance of that fine play. Huffington Post described it as had the effect of a prayer. I love that. In the Aisle said that I saw 10 plays last week. This was in their review. And he said, of the 10 shows I saw last week, Shadowlands was by far the best. And that's, that's high praise in New York, and we're happy to be here. The uniqueness of Fellowship for Performing Arts in New York is described by Theater Mania this way. Fellowship for Performing Arts is offering something sorely missing in New York, in the New York theater scene for far too long. High quality, challenging theater from a Christian perspective. The National Review calls us FPA a counter-cultural force. One critic, I love this one, described FPA as a unique company devoted to Christian theater for secular audiences. That's no easy thing. Even a Jewish atheist such as yours truly can find their stuff worthwhile seeing, discussing, and even recommending. Nothing proselytizes as effectively as a good show that does not proselytize. I thought that was pretty good. And I think the audiences had similar responses. And shows like this allows FPA to provide a Christian voice in a world that largely tunes out that message.
Right. So, Max, that's fascinating to think about the work of Fellowship for Performing Arts being accepted both artistically and the Christian message being accepted in New York City and also in other major theater markets around the country, even in other parts of the world like London. Mm-hmm. Can't wait to see it back on the stage so that you can resume live performances in front of live audiences, as well as the virtual things and the film that have come out of the last year. Is there anything else? We have just a couple minutes left. Anything else you'd like to share with the group that have assembled here today?
Well, thank you for that, Marshall. Obviously this past year has been very challenging for us. It's forced us to do things we would not normally do, pivoting to virtual productions, pivoting to film. I think both are probably here to stay. We've cut our budget by 40% to match the loss of ticket sales and ticket income. And that's one of the reasons why we invited folks to join us tonight to ask for help. Right now, we are entirely dependent on gifts from friends like you who believe in what we do. These virtual events, we've decided not to charge a ticket fee. We decided to give them away, and because we wanted large audiences to see it. One last thing, if you'll permit.
Sure.
In the arts world, Christians are normally seen as critics, cultural critics. We're not usually perceived as culture makers, providing sustenance to the culture. Mainstream opinion is that Christianity is a regressive idea that has nothing to add to the cultural conversation. And of course, I think that's being said because there's no real engagement with the Christian message at a deep level. You're not engaging. You can't say that if you're engaging with thinkers like C.S. Lewis or G.K. Chesterton or John Milton or Augustine or Luther or Aquinas or Pascal or Dostoevsky or on and on and on and on. The picture that's painted of a Christian is as a naive fundamentalist who needs to be enlightened. And I believe our responsibility at FPA is to address that by telling stories that are thoughtful, provocative, nuanced, passionate, that capture the imagination and leave room for the Holy Spirit to do his work. Right. So I think that's the message I'd like to leave with this audience. Thanks for all of you to give me the time to share some thoughts about FPA, who we are and what we do.
Max, that's great. Thanks so much. It's always interesting to talk to you and hear your perspectives on some of these things, especially that cutting edge of where the intersection of faith, art, and culture all come together. Right there where you live in New York City and Midtown Manhattan, where you work with theater people and movie people and artists and actors and producers day after day. So thanks for taking the time to share that. I'd like to switch gears a little bit now and talk about how we can help Fellowship for Performing Arts move forward. Max just explained the problem that came up this last year with having $0 come in through ticket sales. The situation is actually slightly more complex than that, because the people who go to the theater and see the shows end up being the people who are the donors who help, through their philanthropic giving, help the organization to move forward and produce that next piece of art. And so we've lost that as well. That's why we wanted to talk to you here today and tell you what Fellowship for Performing Arts is doing, trying to accomplish, and to ask you to consider investing and helping move this forward, because this is an organization that's not sitting on their hands just waiting for things to change. They're preparing right now for when the world opens back up and they can get back in theaters, and at the same time producing virtual productions and film productions. I'd like to show you something right now. There's been an email that has been sent to you while we're talking. Don't check your email right now, but after we're done, go to your email and you'll see a link that will take you to what you're seeing on the screen right now. This is just a simple donation mechanism I'd like to ask you to consider using this afternoon to make a donation to Fellowship for Performing Arts. When you go to this page, when you open your email, click on that link, do it later. Right now you can just follow along with this, and then in just a minute we're going to see that film clip. But when you click on the link, it'll take you to the giving page of FPA, and you'll have a spot where you can fill in your name, your email address, all of that information. Please fill that in. We probably have some of that for your registration for this program, but we'd like to ask you to fill that in as well. Below that, when you scroll down, you'll see a place for you to mark what you'd like to give to advance the work of Fellowship for Performing Arts. And there are numbers on there ranging from $500 to $100,000. If you can give that much, that's great. Believe me, it's needed, because the budget of FPA to make these high quality productions is very high, and we need people who can give at high levels. But whatever you're able to give today is what we're asking you to do. So there's a place to mark that. There's a little pull down menu there also. You see it says one time. If you pull that down, it's also a place for you to mark to give monthly or a recurring gift, and you can mark the amount there. Below that is a place for you to mark if your employer has a matching gifts program. Some employers do. If so, there's usually some paperwork to fill out. Mark that. Our staff will get back to you to help fill out that paperwork. There's also a place for you to mark if you're interested in making a donation via appreciated stock. And if you'd like to do that, mark that, and our people will get back to you with the transfer information that your brokerage will need. Now, you scroll down a little bit more. It has what you would give today, what you would give by March 31st and by the end of the year, and then there's a custom date you can add. And let me tell you a little bit about that. That might look odd to you. Marshall, why are you suggesting I give today and again March 31st? It's not that so much as maybe you'd like to do something more than you're prepared to do right now, but you have to transfer some funds or do something else to prepare to give your gift. If so, you can mark that down that you fulfill that by March 31st, and we invite you to remember us as well in the year-end giving. Okay, so we have some matching funds today that will increase your gift, and here's how that works. You add up what you're going to give today by March 31st, and by the year end, add those three numbers together, and whatever that total is, as long as it's $500 or more, then we have a matching donor who will match your giving today. So if you give a total of $500 by today, March 31st, December 31st, add them all together. If the total is at least 500 or more, then our matching fund donor will match your gift. If we scroll down a little bit more, you can see where you go ahead and scroll down. You got your credit card information, just like anywhere else. Nothing fancy there. And you can you fill all of that out, and we'll have your donation registered. And you can actually give the first part of your gift today by your credit card or debit card, the way you would for anything else. Just click that submit donation. So again, this is going to be a link that's in an email that was sent to you while we're talking today. Now, we've been talking about that film production, A Most Reluctant Convert. I tell you, this thing is a first-class piece of work, and I'm excited to be able to show you a little bit of a teaser clip of this film. It's just a couple minutes long, but let's watch this, and we're going to bring Max McLean back, and we're going to have a question and answer time. If you haven't done so yet, you can enter your questions into the chat feature on the right of your screen. We'll take some of those questions and talk to Max, but first, let's watch this teaser clip of C.S. Lewis, A Most Reluctant Convert.
Okay, 1 minute till we shoot. Thank you, guys. Let's be ready.
All right.
Final checks, please, Harry.
Is this my chair?
So have a red light and bell, please.
Where's my phone? Who has my phone?
Roll sound.
All right. How's my hair? How's my hair? Good.
All right, nice and quiet, please. Ready for a take. Cameras are rolling. Set. One take one.
Mark it. Quiet. Stand by. And action.
Cheers.
William Kirkpatrick, the Great Knock.
When we set out, I did not believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. The world and the flesh had made their appearance. Now came the devil.
Sony to lose.
That night, as I read Phantastes, my imagination was baptized. The rest of me took a little longer.
Very exciting.
Busy making that great film. I can't wait to see the whole thing and have people see it and start hearing the responses from folks when they see that great piece of art. Welcome back. We've got some questions that we'd like to present to you. Our people have been typing in their questions while you've been talking. The first one is from Amanda Carroll. When do you expect to be back in theaters doing live shows again?
Yeah, that's a good question. the vaccine seems to be giving a sense of optimism to the theaters that we talk to around the country. Right now, everything has been postponed, canceled, rescheduled till August 21st. So we have a scheduled event in Colorado Springs, the Great Divorce, for August 21st, which means it hasn't been canceled yet. But there is a sense of optimism that will go forward. We have also scheduled a whole series of events, of a tour for the Great Divorce in the fall. So if the first one goes through, I think we're going to be pretty busy from August till December of 2021. So that's where it stands at the moment. Things are. I don't think it'll be before then. Everything has always been pushed back.
I know in the last year it's been a multiple times that things have been rescheduled and then canceled, rescheduled again, canceled again, and it's had to be a little bit frustrating. Hopefully, sometime soon we'll see you and the rest of the FPA crew back on the stage. Gail Willingham asked this: will you be thinking about the trend to make some movies with Christian themes into stage plays? So you've made a stage play into a film. Have you thought about going the other direction?
Not specifically. It all begins with the script. If somebody delivers a script to me or we create a script, we really don't care what the source is. If it comes, I think somebody did bring a finished a film that had been produced as a film and brought it to us as a script, and we did play around with it and actually showed it at our Imagine This play reading series. So we're certainly open to it, but probably the biggest challenge in both filmmaking and in theater is the quality of the scripts that have the ability, that come from a Christian worldview, that have the ability to capture the imagination of a diverse intellectual audience. Diversity nowadays sort of means racial diversity, but we're talking specifically of belief diversity at the moment. People that share your view. Yeah.
That idea of selecting the right material has got to be at the heart of making, whether it's a film or a stage production, of making it successful. Things that have a message and are worth watching, and yet aren't hitting people over the head with some kind of preaching, and delivered as art, have the quality of the script that can come out great on the stage that FPA is known for. And congratulations on having been able to really select the right material to engage that diverse audience. Jerry Hall has a question here. I think Jerry's pretty perceptive to notice this. She says, is that the actor who plays James Harriet in the latest All Creatures Great and Small? He's a wonderful actor. So she noticed, recognized him there. Can you talk about him?
Nicholas, his name is Nicholas Ralph. He's a young Scottish actor, and he was hired as a result of the All Creatures Great and Small, played in the UK last summer. And Norman, our director and producer, saw his performance on stage and called him up and asked him if he was available to play young Lewis. So we have the boy Lewis that you saw, who those of you that saw Shadowlands, the play, the boy who played Douglas Gresham, Joy Davidman's son, in our virtual production of Shadowlands, was the young Lewis in our movie. So we borrowed him for Shadowlands. So you'll see him again. He's a brilliant young actor. And Nicholas is a delight to work with. All the cast was just fabulous. But yes, he's and that's the quality of people that are in our movie.
Right, top-notch actors. And Nicholas Ralph, really, you caught him as his wave was starting to rise with All Creatures Great and Small. So that's wonderful. Luke Hahn from Waupun, Wisconsin. What does it take to be a working actor who upholds a biblical, conservative, ethical standard? I'm considering a career in performing arts, but feel unsure if that's feasible. I've heard you talk about that before.
Yeah, there's so much to say about that. It's a very individual decision, but in my case, I came to the conclusion that I couldn't serve two masters. And so, because, an actor, particularly an actor, unfortunately, in the theater business and in the film business, there's just so many of them and so few roles. So, so you become kind of a hired hand, and you're just happy to get any work that comes to you. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to earn a living that way, so I started creating my own work, and that's how Fellowship began. 30 years ago, 35 years ago, I guess. Yeah, 30 years. No, I can't remember. 29 years ago. That's right. So that's one idea. Regardless, if you go to New York, if you go to LA to pursue, first of all, get a really good education, get as broad of a liberal arts education as you can, and then learn your craft, because it is a craft in the sense of you're a skilled worker, whatever aspect of it you're in. And when you go to, here in New York, be involved in a good church, have fellowship with people that are like-minded, so you can wrestle with the questions that will certainly come up. So that's what I.
Good advice. Probably good advice no matter what your vocation is, right?
Yeah.
But certainly in the world that you live in with actors and theater and film, such great advice. We're almost done. We have time for maybe one more question. Before we get to Fergus Monroe, the question's on the screen. I saw another one asking, is FPA considered a nonprofit charitable organization? The answer to that is yes. FPA is a 501c3 nonprofit. All donations are tax deductible according to IRS code, and has been in that category for many years. Also a member of the ECFA, the Evangelical ECFA, and I drew a blank, Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability.
That's right.
And that's sort of the premier gold standard that gives that accountability to nonprofit organizations in the Christian realm. Let's go back to the question from Fergus Monroe, who happens to be from Edinburgh, Scotland. He asked, what guides the themes and topics that I suppose it's FPA explores?
Yeah. Well, certainly to express a Christian worldview. Obviously, Luther and Lewis do it in their writings, so we're we explore it that way. But it wouldn't necessarily be that way. But it feels that those are the obvious that people are interested in. We do ask, does it express a Christian worldview? Does it capture the imagination? And the other thing is, are people interested in seeing it? So we want to make sure there's an audience for it as well. But I would be interested in contemporary stories of where the Christian worldview is challenged. Because one of the great things about theater, it's about conflict. So when you have conflict that is representative of your faith, I think of something like Chariots of Fire, where such a thing happened. Very moving story. Those things I would be interested in. Yes.
Well, that's great, Max. We promised people in the invitation that we'd go 45 minutes.
Yep.
The countdown timer right now says we've gone 44 minutes and 35 seconds. So we're ready to wrap up. Thanks so much for doing this today. It's been great to hear your answers to people's questions, as well as your answers to my questions when we talked earlier. And folks, please continue to support the work of Fellowship for Performing Arts. Keep an eye out for the upcoming productions, what's happening over Easter that Max talked about. When we come back to the stages in a city near you, keep your eye open for this great film when it becomes available to watch. We got some good things ahead, and please remember to pray for and support the work of Fellowship for Performing Arts as these guys go out there day after day and present top quality art from a Christian worldview in what has really become a post-Christian world. That's all we have for today. We'll look forward to talking to you again. Thank you for being with us. Good afternoon.